3 years as chair, but more so as a member, and Michael Richardson will be taking over as chair come August, I think it is. We'll be doing a transfer over. Just for members, you will recall that occurring. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to you, David, just to give a bit of an introduction and discussion for members.
Thank you for that. The purpose of your audit committee, it's really spelled out in your terms of reference, and it's relatively clear. There's a few points I'll draw direct reference to, and you can obviously read in your own time. But the purpose of the committee is to provide independent assurance and advice to the council. That's really the key phrase that we want to focus on, because that's our purpose. We're an advisory committee of sorts. We're not a decision-making component, and we certainly can't set any form of direction. What we are, and what we, through recent years, and it will be in February 8 years that I've been part of the committee, what we have focused on in the composition of the committee, especially through the independents, is having complementary skill sets. We have our elected member reps, which play a key role to bring the community voice to the committee for our consideration, and the 3 independents that have been on there this year. In the past it was a slightly different mix prior to the reform, but in recent times it's shifted to a 3 independent, 2 elected member-based committee. The basis of the 3 independent members is to bring an insight into risk, finance, systems, processes, and a bit of commercial acumen, which is objective. And I think that's really the key function behind us as a committee. So that's really the essence of who we are as a committee, what we stand for, and how we are trying to work with you as an elected body in providing you thoughts and insights that you are maybe not thinking about, and also providing you, as I said, that objectivity, because we are that one step removed from the communities that we're working for.
So if I just take members back, so originally, obviously there's been significant discussion around just recently the annual business plan and budget, and also some discussion around the precinct. Councillor Koremba did put forward a motion on notice about seeking the attendance of the audit committee to come to this briefing. So really it's open up for members now to raise those questions and concerns, to have that discussion with the members.
I guess I'll go first then.
Councillor Koremba.
Thank you. Thanks for coming down. First of all, thank you for the work you do. You said that you provide advice, is that right? And so, in relation to financial matters and of that nature?
In essence, it'd be advice in the terms of guidance.
Guidance.
What we see elsewhere, we both Michael and I are working with many councils within the sector, so we do have a broad lens on what other actions and activities are.
Yeah.
So we advice in the essence of guidance in some respect as well.
So sort of advice like a doctor would give you, you don't have to listen to what your doctor says, but it's advice that you probably should take on board because he's the expert. Or would you consider yourself an expert in what you do?
I would say so.
Okay, so it'd be important that we take your advice, especially if we don't have that level of expertise that you're actually offering.
We bring a perspective. So should you take our advice, our guidance, however you want to term it,
yeah.
Hollis, that's your choice.
Yeah.
But we bring a perspective, a business perspective to the decisions you're making.
Okay.
We don't have the insight of the greater organisation from a community service perspective. We're aware of it,
yeah.
but we're not at the coalface. So I wouldn't expect you to take our advice and implement it blindly, dare I say. I would expect you to consider it in a balanced fashion.
And is the Audit and Risk Committee a requirement by the Local Government Act? It's a statutory requirement that we... So obviously the Local Government Act has a level of importance, or puts a level of importance on what you do, correct? And obviously you have every council in South Australia has an Audit and Risk Committee for that reason. It's like, I would consider it almost like guide rails as such when it comes to financial issues. Would that be a fair assessment?
I don't know if it would be guide rails, but we are, the Minister is obviously deemed, and legislative environment deeming supporting committees are important. Yes.
There's a lot of things to unpack here, obviously, because you guys do look at a lot of things. So I might jump around here and there, and I think maybe some of the other councillors may have some questions. But I've noticed that by watching the meetings, which is really interesting, and and correct me if I'm wrong, but I sense that as the Audit and Risk Committee that sometimes you feel that what you're putting forward is not getting through to the elected members. I think you in your facts, you may have said, what more can I do other than to shape the elected members to get the recommendation? That's a pretty stern...
Yeah, no, back it.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. We have for years, and it is limited and it's publicly available minutes, as you know, that we've put recommendations to the council for many years now, in particular in regards to matters of sustainability, in rate setting to cover renewal of assets, for example.
Yeah.
There's a whole gamut of components that we've considered in our review of annual budgets, annual business plans, long-term financial plans, and the like. And that's generally where those comments do come to the fore, which for the last meeting was certainly one of the conversations.
Sense of frustration.
Right? And there is an element of frustration when it comes to that there are apparently concerns over the sustainability, yet in the past we have provided advice, guidance, if you will, to consider, and it questionably hasn't been acted upon.
Yeah.
There are many examples, but that's the essence of the frustration. And to your point, the last meeting, the comment was, what more can we do other than provide you minutes, transcripts, and conversations?
Yeah.
We have 2 elected members on the committee, which should be bringing that back to the chamber, for the chamber's consideration. And I genuinely hope they are conveying our message correctly.
Yeah.
Because if they're not, then there is a break in the machine.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I think the elected members, if they are listening to what we're saying, we should be really cutting back, but we're actually spending more. And that is, and I'm just trying to ascertain where the break, like you just said, there's a breakdown somewhere.
I'm going to correct you there. You're talking about cutting back. At no point did we say cut back.
Okay.
That's your interpretation. I appreciate that might be.
Yeah.
Our minutes, our conversation, we're not about cutting back.
Yeah. Well, sorry. Maybe not cutting back, but just thinking more about how we spend money or what we approve. Obviously, you've brought up stuff, for example, like the renewal of our assets.
Sure.
It seems like we're not actually, and I think our finance officer said the same thing, we're not really putting aside what we should be. So is this a situation where this down the track is going to bite us in the backside?
Yeah, and to be quite blunt, I think there are concerns around, let's take the renewal example, a great one, because it's quite pervasive throughout council, and any council has the same issue.
Yeah.
And by the way, there are many councils who have got this issue that they're battling with.
Yeah.
Renewals are a great example. If you were to look at your financials, now I am an accountant by trade, so naturally I go to the numbers, but they're the representation of the truth, right?
Yeah.
So if you go to your renewal program over the last 5 years, you spent 3.8 million on average on renewals. You spent 6.6 million on new, based on your financial statements. So you're putting double the amount of effort of your capital spend into new assets rather than maintaining your current assets.
Right.
That's not a cutting back issue. That's a priority issue.
Okay.
I would question the priorities of the council. You focus for whatever the reason may be. That's not my role. That's your role.
Mm-hmm.
But the consequence of that, of under-renewing, under-maintaining, which is the risk, I'm not saying it's happened, it's a risk, is that you may not have sufficient funds for the future. Now, especially when you choose to rate lower than CPI, which you have for the past how many years.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty confident that management have put up a CPI and maybe more budget recommendation from a rating perspective. And as an elected member body, based on the data that I've seen, you were chosen to go under that. So you're spending on you're not maintaining your asset base to the standard that you should, based on your own internal documents and plans, and you're choosing to underrate. None of that is about spending less. It's about generating enough revenue to maintain the infrastructure and then maintaining the infrastructure rather than building something else.
Okay, so I guess when we say spending less, if we build less new things, we would have to then, that would require less funding of renewal of those assets, right? Because they're not getting built. If we're actually not building as many new things, then the requirement to renew them isn't there. So we can technically in a way keep our rates.
That's a long bow to draw, but there'd be a component of that. But ultimately, it would be a redirection of funds. So you're still spending the same in the short term on maintenance. Now, that may reduce your operating costs because you don't have reactive maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay, potentially. I don't know, I'm not an engineer.
Yeah.
But that's certainly something that I would expect to happen is if you're maintaining your assets sufficiently, maintaining the right levels of service to the community through your infrastructure, you may have a short to mid-term reduction in ongoing maintenance costs or reactive maintenance.
Yeah.
Potentially, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the point I'm bringing to is not about spending less, it's about spending the right way.
Okay, so
And
prioritising things.
Prioritising is a huge issue. Now, if you don't, I mean, again, the engineers are going to have to speak in due course, I don't know if they're in the room, but assets have a rapid fall away if you don't maintain them at the right, within a right period, a right window.
Correct, yeah.
Right, so your deterioration is huge, and that's going to cost the communities in the future significantly more.
Right.
If you don't spend the money the right way, and if you're not rating enough, and I am coming back to rates, because rates is what funds roads.
Yes.
Okay, let's not kid ourselves. So if you're not rating enough to maintain your roads, the future communities are going to be paying significantly to get things back up to scratch.
Okay. And so I guess, looking at that then, would you say that in the 6%, and I think Councillor Shirley then alluded to this, actually try to make a motion to increase it to 7.5 and go out to the community. Is that a fairer figure to go at? I mean, how do we know what is the right amount of, what is the right figure? Because we're voting on this. We're relying on people to give us recommendations, administration as well. And so how do we know that we're actually rating the right amount?
You've got to let the data speak in that regard. So your administration, who I think are relatively capable, mind you, I just want to give you that bit of assurance, and that's what one of our roles is to, form an opinion on that in receiving data that we consider on your behalf and then recommend to you or provide guidance to. They're providing you with a rate under instruction many times as well. So the appetite of the council comes into play here. Okay, you set the tone, and at the top, okay, let's not pussyfoot around here.
Yeah.
As you set the tone, the administration will follow that tone.
Yeah.
The reality is, if you ask them for a balanced budget, a rate that will cover renewals, get assets sustainable, I'm confident they'll provide you what you need, the information you need. Does that mean 6 is the right number or 7? I don't know.
Okay.
Because what we've seen is under instruction through your workshops by you as the elected members.
Yeah.
Does 6 or 7 scare me in the current environment in local government? Absolutely not. You have councils looking at 14% increases.
Yeah, that's Burnside.
Yeah. There are plenty of others in the 7s and 8s as well.
Yeah.
Because that's what they needed. Now, 5 years ago, if I can, there were many councils that were putting in 0 to less than 1% rate increases because of the fear of COVID. It has had a compounding effect. Councils now have to do that. Did that in year 1. I don't think it was 0, but it was a very nominal, minimum rate rise. You are now playing catch up.
Yeah.
So 6% doesn't surprise me because you are playing catch up. Plus the cost of materials, and given the trade, cost of materials and labour are increasing at a rate of knots and have been year on year for the last 3 years.
Okay.
You are subject to the cost of materials and labour in this environment as well. So 6%, I actually think is quite a restrained budget.
Yeah. So I guess if we're playing catch up, how far along can we can down the road before it basically bites us in the backside?
I don't. That's a massive modelling exercise, and I don't have the data on hand.
But should that be something we'll be looking at when we go to say, okay, if we're going to go from 6, should we actually be 7 or increasing 1 plus every year, so that we make a huge 14% rate increase like Burnside or what's been happening like Alexandrina where they've been caught out with their assets as well.
Yeah.
Isn't that something that we should be showing or at least asking for?
You would be getting elements of that through your long-term financial plans. It's got a 10-year forecast.
Yeah, and our asset management plan renewals is something obviously council is preparing to do because our assets now, looking at their renewal, needs to be based on new data and new information that we didn't have at the last time that you reviewed them. So that is constantly being presented and brought back to the chamber, and a review of your long-term financial plan happens every single year after you've endorsed your annual business plan budget.
Yeah.
In case you brought something forward, pushed something out, you will review that again. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Prim, I'm also conscious I've got a few members who've got a question.
I'll ask some more, but I guess the thing is with all these variables and unknown things, is now the right time to be going into a major project spending $11.7 million?
Yeah.
My turn to talk, I think. Look, I think councils can walk and chew gum at the same time. They're very separate conversations to mine. Look, there's no doubt that the sports precinct is a big impost on your community financially, but there's also a huge community benefit in delivering that project for your ratepayers, and that's the decision of council as to whether you think that's worthwhile. That's your job as elected members, is to prioritise and to understand the cost, and that's what we're here to help you do. Yeah. But then also to weigh that against what the benefit of that particular project is, and the hundreds of other projects and services you deliver to your community all the time. So for me, is now the right or wrong time in a rate setting sense. That's up for you to decide. That's not our role as an audit committee to tell you that. Our role is to point out the costs and the financial risks and all that sort of stuff, and to input into your decision making. But ultimately, that's an elected member decision.
Yeah. But just quickly, I'm glad you answered that question, because I think it was you that actually said, is now the right time to be actually adding that 1.2% on top when we actually haven't signed a contract or we know what they're doing. So we're going ahead of schedule here, putting potentially extra rate on the community that we may not go through with this.
Yep.
You raised that yourself.
Yep.
So I'm sort of getting conflicting ideas. Is it a good idea to do it? It's not a good idea.
Yeah, they're very separate things. Is that one of them is a phasing issue as to when is the right time to inform your community of this project, when is the right time to actually raise your rates to pay for it. That's on the presumption that the project is going ahead. That's not to do with the financial sustainability of council, and not directly linked to setting of your rates and the impact on your financial sustainability.
So, sorry, the Senate wouldn't have an impact on the sustainability?
Of course it does, and your administration has provided us now and elected members with the latest and best information of what that project is going to cost. So yes, it will impact. But the question you asked was, when I said, is the right time to be including in the budget, that was a very specific issue around, is it this year or next year, or when is the right time to actually have that rate increase? My point at the time was, is the project certain enough to go ahead within certain timeframes for that to be the right decision to do it now? Okay. So it was just confined to that little piece of the puzzle, that bit of the conversation.
Thanks.
Sorry, Councillor Henderson and then the Mayor.
Thank you for coming along this evening. In terms of our assets, one very expensive group of assets are our bridges, which many ratepayers may not be aware that we have to maintain. We have something like 48 or 50 bridges, many of which are very old, and many of which, probably 10 to 12 of which, will reach the end of their lifetime in the next 10 to 15 years. So obviously there is a safety issue there. With your advisory group, are you able to give us advice on priorities based on things like safety issues over and above renewal of other assets that we have? I've been talking about bridges in this chamber for at least 3 or 4 years, and we're very, very slow at doing anything about that.
The question is more in the direction of engineering and structural safety. It's certainly not mine, and I guess to say not your expertise either. Ours is about the financial implications surrounding that. So unfortunately we can't answer that specific question on the safety and the priority based on safety and infrastructure integrity. You'd have to go down the engineering path and speak to someone much more qualified than us. What we are talking about is, from a financial perspective, identifying that with sufficient time to provision cash to make sure that you've got funds to effect the renewal on time before you have a catastrophe. But the timing of that would be engineering that.
So you would be able to give us advice on the time, given the cost of renewal of those assets over time?
Not the timing of the structure failure, but...
No, that's not what I meant, the spending, the cost of spending.
We would take that data, and it comes through your asset management plans ultimately. So
yes.
That's what we look at. We look at your asset data through your asset management plans in conjunction with long-term plans and annual budgets, and see if there is sufficiency or not.
I guess my question really relates to the detail at which you're looking at the asset management plan and the future years too. So,
can I just add to that too? So for members, And that's a good example in terms of bridges, and I'm sure our independent audit committee members will feed into this. This is one of your challenges as elected members in our community. So replacement of bridges is renewal. So that would increase our renewal ratios that are a concern to our audit committee because we're not renewing. But like with new, this council has a number of areas that don't have stormwater. We have flooding issues. So there are significant multi-million-dollar projects that we put into this budget to ensure that big suburbs like Encounter Bay have appropriate stormwater because they were built without it. So we then, you're getting pressures from community because they want to have appropriate stormwater. That's new. So no bridge, we have new stormwater. So you have challenges as a community, as a council for our community, where you're tugging with these new and renewal. Renewal doesn't mean we're not looking after our roads and our existing roads, but there are pressures because we are growing, and what we were as a holiday coastal town with no stormwater, we now have big suburbs with no stormwater, and that runoff and those challenges that we then are running around and having big maintenance costs. You have policies around footpaths where you have it on one side of the street, and we look to renew, and then you have communities wanting it on both sides. Now all of a sudden you've got a brand new project that you didn't have in your budget before. It offsets your renewal and your new. So when the audit committee says they don't, you have more insight as a council about the pressures you get from community and all the other challenges, let alone just renewal and new within our budgets. Sorry, Mayor, you had a question.
Thank you. I was just picking up on what you were saying, David, in relation to the administration take the advice from the council. And I can remember when we were doing our first budget sessions, it was very clear from the elected members, and many said they came to council saying that they wanted to keep rates low, and so the council provided the administration with, I think, saying we want rates to be kept as low as possible to CPI, and so when the council says that, then the administration follow that, and it's not from a community perspective, even though our rates are set to be low, we're getting lots of pushback about having rates or having them above CPI. This year they're 1.1% above CPI to take into account the sport and rec precinct if that goes ahead, and next year 1% or less than 1% for the sport and rec precinct. But those are the only 2 years that the sport and rec precinct will influence rates, even though there's misinformation going out saying it'll be forever. But I'm just wondering, from your perspective, how can the committee provide advice to the council around different ways of modelling rates to address some of the concerns and be part of that budget discussion prior to council itself providing advice to providing instructions to the administration, where the administration have clearly said this is probably not enough right at the beginning, but it's still, that's the advice that's been given. I'm not quite sure whether or not you can, rather than having to come in and repair damage, you can actually come in at the beginning and provide some advice, because even it seems to me personally, from the elected members on the audit committee, we don't necessarily get, maybe they don't communicate that advice well, or they are involved in voting in different ways as well. So I'm just wondering, from the independents, which is a very independent voice, if you can provide us with more advice, or advice in a different way through that budget process. It's a long-winded question, but sorry.
I'll try and segment parts of that, and one I will defer to you, Michael, in due course about how to move forward, because my term is up effectively, and it might be a new way of thinking to come. So I'll let you tackle that point in due course. I'm really glad to hear your reflection back on the of the elected member body setting the appetite for rates. Really comforting to hear that it was an active discussion and that instruction was given to management and management followed it. I guess what it does is it comes back to this is the forum that determines. So if there is a shortfall or a surplus in any council, it's always the elected members that have to bear the brunt of the consequences. It's your choice. And there's no other two ways about it. I still believe, I mean, again, there are elected members present at the Audit Committee too in official capacity, others that come in from time to time, and I've never turned anyone away. All are welcome to the Audit Committee to hear the conversation. It's a public meeting. And we've not been discreet in talking about sustainability and rate setting. And in regards to the modelling aspect, that's quite a robust task. You need to consider how much you want the administration to provide you modelled data on the various rating mechanisms, well and truly beyond the time we have as a committee. But we would, I dare say, consider it, and I'll let my answer that in due course, because I would have considered it in the past if it came through as an options paper, for an example. But you need to be mindful of the burden that goes onto the administration team. If you throw in a new task, it takes away from something else, or there's going to be new resources required. That's a conversation that you need to have as well. But ultimately, it's all going to come back to the elected members' appetite. You set the tone. And they can come up with 100 different options. If you're at a below CPI rate, because that's what you've decided, 100 options aren't going to change your appetite. So I think there needs to be a very robust conversation about what the Council of the elected members' appetite is for rating. And that will form very clear instruction, I believe, to the administration team. They can bring you some viable options in that regard. That's my view.
Yeah, and directly answering the question, Mayor Jenkins, about, is there a different way? I hope there is. It's an absolute yes. Our role here is to advise and provide help to the council to make better decisions, and if that's done by being more proactive and getting in front of the elected members in January and February and helping to better explain your financial position, then absolutely we will do that.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Councillor Schiller and Councillor Burns.
I would beg to differ that the elected members' current budget did have that expressed so strongly. I think we set our rates. The rates were given to us at one point at one of our budget sessions. So I've got a different opinion about whether we conveyed an appetite of rate setting so strongly. I think the first 2 years you come into council and you're learning how to shape budgets and the implications that it will have in the future. So I believe that administration also have the ability to give a greater guidance if they truly think that we're on the wrong track. And the thoughts of trying to get information from the Audit and Risk Committee earlier in the piece, because we've got 3 entities. We've got the Audit and Risk Committee, we've got the Chamber, and we have administration. When we're thinking independently, we all sort of get our own little bias. Until we can hear everyone in the room at one time, we can't get a combined opinion.
Councillor Burns.
Thank you, and thank you for coming in. One of the challenges I've observed being both in the Audit Committee and in the Chamber is that documentation that is being reviewed by the Audit Committee is being reviewed partially in isolation. And the Audit Committee is presented with lots of information, and what I've noticed is that you guys are very good also at understanding a lot more of what's being presented and taking it in context. That isn't always the case, I observe, with elected members. So when you have a meeting, or everything is minuted, everything is conveyed back to the elected members. but you really have to look at several meetings to be able, for example, the CEO has brought up rightly about flood and stormwater. We've got a provision. There's other things that we need to be provisioning for. But a lot of members may only be looking at the audit committee reviewing the budget, for example, not necessarily things that have been presented and discussed over the previous 6 months. So you have to I look at things as work member collectively as to whether we can afford things. So things like when we got on to council, was said that a council can normally only afford one major project a term, in the region of probably around $4+ million. To me, that's the computer system upgrade. That's our investment, our project. We have other competing priorities, assets, floodwater, lots of other areas that we need provision in the budget. So to me, there are financial implications if we do too many, if we don't do enough, or we neglect certain things and just focus on new projects. And that's where the audit committee, I think, can add a lot of value from my participation in highlighting that. Now, whether elected members do their research and look back and see the advice of the audit committee over several months of meetings, I'm not sure. Because quite often I'm in the chamber and people are asking questions. And certainly, questions can be asked, but I don't think people are looking at the bigger picture or the bigger financial picture. Administration have raised many times many documents. If you read it all, you have to be much more careful about how we prioritise and what we approve. And I think part of the challenge for elected members is that whilst we are required under legislation to prepare for meetings and do the research, you really need to be looking at lots of documents, not just the current thing going to be discussed at the meeting, to really understand the implications. I also think that administration could assist elected members by putting, they have financial impacts of every decision being made. I'd like to probably see that ideally a bit broader on our borrowings, on our rate increases and so forth. And things like that have been discussed in the audit committee previously. I think that would help elected members. A lot of elected members don't have the same level of expertise that you guys have. And a number of community people have said to me, reading all the documentation is very confusing. They just like things simple that they can understand. And I think for elected members to be making good decisions, we need to take into account not just what the audit committee said last meeting, but what the audit committee has said the last probably years of meeting. Look at our budget, look at our forecast budgets and other costs and projects. Where we defer doing asset assessments and so forth, that's going to have an impact at some point, and we need to be provisioning for that. I mean, Michael raised earlier this year a very good point. I mean, there's different ways of provisioning for your assets. There's one where you can do budget, you put money aside, or you put a budget provision in and you don't use that until you need to, you can borrow. So there's different options, different models. And administration, I think, have been following one model, but if we're finding that we're not provisioning enough, that maybe it needs to be a bit more in our face to say, well, if you don't do that, this is going to be an impact in 2027 or 28 would be much more helpful.
Do you want to comment?
What's the question?
Yeah, on the presumption there's some form of question. Councillor Burns, I understand your point. The comment I made at the audit committee is it is the responsibility of every elected member to have a working knowledge of all facets of council. You have your elected member training, but I dare say you would have to ensure that if you have a gap yourselves, and we all have our gaps, that you supplement it accordingly. It's asking management to provide more information, in most cases probably wouldn't bridge that gap. So you all do have an obligation to have a base acumen especially in regards to financial. It's your obligation as a councillor, is effectively no different to a board. There's obligations accordingly. I'd be very surprised if the management team weren't prepared to work with you and provide you within reason what is needed, but I think there needs to be a balance struck. So I don't think it's as simple as saying to the administration, you need to provide us more and make it simpler. There is an incredible amount of information in this industry for every single council, and there will be overload, I assure you. So be careful what you ask for and asking for more, because you just might get it and you get lost within it.
It's not, I was just trying to answer your question, which was why are people not necessarily taking the advice? What I'm saying is that to me, in reading all the documentation, it's quite obvious what we should be arguing in the chamber, what we should be prioritising. But I'm not sure if that's the case with other members.
Again, I'll invite the members to attend the work committee meetings. You're more than welcome, and to listen to us discuss and debate. You might learn something about financial management systems deeper than you currently know, and that could only help you in the future. So that's fine.
If I may, Councillor Burns, just to add to your comments, unlike boards, local government, you have a whole array of information in addition to your annual business plan and budget is one small part. Unlike state government, federal government and businesses, you have a 10-year long-term financial plan that's not, some of it is actually a lot of estimates, the further you get out it's more guesstimates and estimates, but it's built upon your asset management plan. So every asset, there's $362 million worth of assets this council owns and needs to maintain and look after and repair and renew, in addition to the new ones that you then look to build based on community wants and needs, and also the needs of the community as a growing community. You've still got roads that are dirt out there, and we are growing, unlike your metropolitan councils. When we have the questions around we have high rates, we do have high rates, because there's lots of, we're still growing. There's infrastructure we don't have, and there's expectations of our community that we should have it. But there's lots of documents that feed into that, and we need to stick to, when you set your annual business plan and budget, I, as CEO, administer the organisation to deliver that. But every year there's more things that come on. We add another footpath, we add a new project, and that just increases and or pushes out more things in your long-term financial plan that you're not able to do, and we're adjusting. So you as elected members have a very challenging role, because you have the demands of the community with expectations, and you have knowledge, a lot more knowledge than the community does out there, and you're making big decisions, not just for today, for 10, 20 years ahead. So there's a lot of information for members to have to digest, and it is, I point to Councillor Schiller's comments, it is a partnership. We do need to give you guidance and advice, and put more things to the chamber and bring things to your attention, but ultimately the council makes the decision. Sorry, Mayor Jenkins and then Councillor Caramlas.
Just to the point that Councillor Burns was making in terms of people not asking questions at council meetings. I know a lot of councillors talk to administration and go when they get their agenda and talk to the finance person or talk to the CEO about items in the agenda and have their questions answered and go through things. So while people, some people are more introverted and don't like asking questions on the spot or don't think things on the spot, and will go beforehand. Everyone's different in the way that they do it, but I know that every single councillor that we have here cares for the community and wants to do the best for the community, and takes their role really, really seriously. So they do go to administration. I know as Mayor, often I will get questions without notice that involve budget stuff, which I refuse, and then we get a question, so that is on notice, so we can look at budget implications. Often we will have a deputation by a particular group that wants council to give it money, and then we go into a motion about let's give it some money. And some of these are supported by people that are on the audit committee as well as other members. and we go back to that audit committee guidance about nothing until, we should be saying, that's a great idea, we'd love to give you an extra $60,000 on top of the $100,000 that we give you. Let's leave it till the next budget and we can talk about it. We can't do it now. I think it's about the elected body getting really disciplined and following the advice of the audit committee and not just chipping away, because some of these small things might just be that chipping away, rather than making it a rule that, okay, we'll wait for the next budget cycle before we talk about it. But I do know that all the elected members take their jobs very seriously, and I know that administration take a lot of questions before council meetings about the agenda items.
So Councillor Cornwell, then Councillor Schiller.
Thank you. I've heard people say that, there's an appetite to keep the rates as low as possible or close to CPI. I think we should be doing that in the middle of the cost of living crisis. I just had an email today of a person saying if the rates go up, she's going to have to sell her home. These are the decisions, this is what's happening in our community. And we can sit here and say that we're going to be more fiscally responsible, and we've spoken a lot about assets. But there's a lot of things that the council does, and this is where we have to make a decision. Because to me it seems like we're the first port of call for a lot of people in the community, whether it's at the last council meeting we gave out thousands of dollars to the Arts and Culture Centre because we need a vibrant arts and culture community. We're giving money to the Aquatic Centre because it needs $500,000+ to survive. We've got the horse-drawn cart that needs money. We've got all these things that need money. And these recommendations keep coming back to the chamber, come to the chamber. They're not initiated by elected members. Okay? And they're ongoing concerns. When I came to council, the Aquatic Centre was already here, the tram was here, all these things. And all I've heard from time and time again is we have to do this because these are services. And my question is, at what point are the services you are providing to the community actually creating more damage to the overall community in the cost of these things? And that is what needs to be discussed. We can sit and talk about, no one's talking about cutting funding to roads. These are the fundamental things that council should do. And if it was up to me, that's exactly all we would do. Pick up our rubbish and fix our roads. And any extra money that we've got, if the community can afford it, then we talk about that. But we've got this back to front. And so we can all pretend that this is what's really happening. But in actual fact, recommendation after recommendation comes to this chamber, and it's the same people voting for it. That's what's happening. And so I encourage, and there's a lot of people here that are feeling the pain, and a lot of people out there that are feeling the pain. So we can dress it all we like, but until we actually start talking about what council has to do and can afford to do, and if we only did those things, I have no doubt that we can actually keep rates to just above or a little bit more than CPI. But it's all these extra things that we call services that are costing a huge amount of money. And so that is creating a lot of pain for the community.
Sorry, it's not an audience. We just need to be quiet. Thank you.
Do you mind if I respond?
Thank you.
Don't misunderstand, not unsympathetic to the cost of living matters. Please do not misunderstand. The conversation in local government's simple. Well, let me simplify it. I'll take it very, very simple. You can either do less, borrow more, or rate more. You're talking about the do less.
Yeah.
Okay? Which is a perfectly valid conversation. But the do less conversation, the level of services that you as an elected member body choose to provide your community is a conversation as an elected member body you need to agree on. What is your appetite for services to the community? If it is roads, rates and rubbish, you know what I'm saying? And if the entire elected member body agrees to the democratic process, then that's your path forwards. If the elected member body chooses bells and whistles, it needs to understand the financial consequences of the bells and whistles. So I don't disagree with you if that's the path you take, but it seems that there is a divide between essential services and bells and whistles, and until you as an elected member body actually get on the same page, you're going to have these issues. So it's time for you as an elected member body to agree what your direction is. 100%
agree. We should be on the same page. But what we forget in this chamber is, even though we are 9 individual elected members, we represent the whole of the community. And we should only go as fast as our slowest people in the community, and there are a lot of people in the community now struggling. So right now, instead of spending money on the bells and whistles as you made it out, we should be spending money on just the things we need to and keep those rates as low as we can, be financially sustainable, and in the future when things are good and everybody in the community is doing well, then we can think about the bells and whistles. But right now, I don't think that this chamber is thinking how it should be. And you guys have raised time and time again the concerns. And I just, after listening to the meetings, I'm like, why is it not getting through to the chamber?
My only question to that is, have you agreed what is required? So you're talking about spending money on what's absolutely required. Has that been agreed at this point amongst you? So that's your body of work.
Yeah.
It's not complicated.
No.
Right? And you may decide it could be the precinct in question. It may be what is required for the community. I'm not here to form judgment on that today.
Yeah.
Right? That's not the conversation right now. But if that is needed by the community, then you have to work out a way of facilitating it or manage expectations accordingly. Okay? So that essential services plus community needs that you refer to, that's what I'm talking about as your body of work and getting on the same page with. Not just paring everything back to the minimum, make sure people can survive. Right? You need to form your position as that community representative.
Councillor Schiller, you had a question?
Just a constructive comment about a special meeting that we had. We were placed with our potential budget to go out to public consultation, and we didn't have the ability to sit here and discuss the budget informally prior to the decision being made, and I found that very frustrating. Whether we had a prior meeting to that special meeting where we actually had a discussion prior and then went in and voted, I would have been a lot happier. I'm sure the councillors tried to get that to go out of session so that we could discuss things prior to it going out to public consultation, so I just reiterate my frustration over that particular part of that meeting.
Councillor Schofield.
I'm just going to throw the cat amongst the pigeons. If we as the chamber decided to hold our rates at 6%, the only services that we provided for our community were roads, rates and rubbish. That our grants to our sports club, we don't do. Our grants to the individuals who wish to improve their personal aspects through sport and that are not done. The clubs that come to us for loans do not get loans, they repay that money. The Victor Harbour Business Association, that we fund quite heavily, does not get funded. Then I guess we could look at the cancer car, the support for aged care, close our library a little bit more, and there's quite a few people that are struggling that use the services in the library to entertain their children, to keep warm and to keep cool in the summertime. So we could do all of that, hold our rates around the 6.5%, so that we are looking at a long-term assets. So we've got those under cover, and we do absolutely nothing else. I would think that would be more of our community disadvantaged by us doing that than putting up the rates. Our role here as an elected member, or one of my roles as an elected member, is not just to serve the community that I represent at the moment, but to ensure that in years to come that the decisions made in this chamber are going to have good, lasting effects on the community to come. I do know that the sporting complex everybody is up in arms and there's a lot of information going around that is incorrect. What we're doing with that is that we are looking at future generations, the health, both mentally and physically, of our younger generation and our older generations. And so it is, as people have said, and as the CEO said, the balancing act in this chamber, and this is my 8th or 9th year here, has been too long. Thank you, sir. It is always there. Because how many people? We've 14,000 people and each person wants something different. And you go home some nights and you wonder whether you have made the right decision. And you listen to the comments and the love letters that you get. But at the end of the day, I know that my councillors and the staff here at the City of Victor Harbour have our city at heart. And I do know that we will never ever have everybody agree on what we do, because we're all different and our needs are all different.
Sorry, Councillor Crumby, you had another question?
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. And I know that we've even discussed about turning or not providing water in the library. I think dramatising potentially what could happen is not going to help us to make the valid decisions we need to cut back on the things we need to, so that the majority of the community aren't hurting. And we're not going to know that until we speak to them. You've also mentioned about sporting groups, and I agree, sporting groups, they need help. But you also said previously that it used to be back in the day, sporting groups used to fundraise. They used to go out and seek their own money. Now councillors first port of call. And we've created that. We've created that over a period of time of just having an open checkbook and trying to help everybody. And if we keep doing that, we will get in a situation we'll be able to help nobody. And so that is what I'm concerned about. Just one question. The Mayor mentioned that there was a lot of misinformation going on about the sporting precinct, and you said just before that there will be no ongoing funding after the money provided, that 11.7 million. So there's no requirement from council after that date. Is that correct?
I don't think that there's, I think it's just the $11.5 million. I think that we will be getting, they'll be paying rates. Are you asking a rhetorical question?
No, I'm asking you. You said, sorry, you just said you don't think. That's not 100%. This project's, we're repurposing this land for 149 years. None of us are going to be alive to see the end of this. What I'm asking, because we've gone out to the community, it's been stated in the local paper as well, that there'd be ongoing money after this 11.7 million. Is that correct? Not a cent more?
You're still in the negotiations with your public-private partnership. But again, you are at this stage, that is all council is allocated, but you're still in those negotiations. And I think this forum, Councillor Corimba, is not for you to perform in terms of the precinct. It's around asking your independent members some questions around audit and risk. Again, I'm not getting into your discussions across the floor. We have your independent audit committee members here to talk to you about their role and your role as an elected member. Why the members are here, and they've come here to be specifically for that. Can you focus those questions in that space? And there is a closed session because parts of the precinct, because you have requirements under the Local Government Act as elected member, you have a commercial and conference negotiation that still has elements in confidence for the benefits of your community. I stress you keep those in confidence until we're able to release them. At the moment we're doing the land revocation, all that information is publicly available, the correct information from council, and we'll get to that. But the members are here, so I would direct your questions to the audit committee members.
And I'm sorry that you think that it's a performance. It was a question that was asked because this has brought up a lot of issues in the community about what's going on. And
it has, because the correct information has been shared. But we believe, and part of actually having a good discussion, I am thankful the community are aware. I'm thankful the community are participating in the consultation. Because we've had budgets that go out for consultation and we have 20 responses.
Yeah.
So as a level of government, I'm really thankful that we have an active community that wants to participate in an area where they have to pay a tax, because they pay a tax. And I'm really pleased that we have an active participating community.
Okay. Thanks. I guess one last question. I think now there's a change in the Act that you guys have to provide a summary regarding why do you think that came about? Well, just your opinion. Why do you believe? Obviously, your notes, we have minutes, everybody can access the Audit and Risk Committee. Why do you believe that the summary now is part of what is required of the Audit and Risk Committee?
My personal view would be that sometimes the minutes cannot capture the nuance of the conversation that is happening at Audit Committee level, and it's an attempt to try and, I guess, shed a bit more light to the people that are reading information to get a bit more of a holistic picture of what was discussed.
Thank you.
Do any other members have any other comments or questions for our independent Audit Committee members, or do you have any further comments you want to provide to Council?
I just think that the last 15 minutes of the conversation is the key point here. Clearly, the Audit Committee, in my view, has been dragged into a really important conversation about service levels and affordability, and they are not Audit Committee roles and responsibilities to be commenting on those things. It's about the elected members, as David said, getting on the same page. And, you know, I'm sure you're not going to agree. Looking at this discussion, there's going to be views that are going to stay apart, but part of your role as elected members is to make a decision and get behind it, and to rally your community behind those decisions. So I encourage you to have that conversation. It's not going to be an easy one, but until you have it and can agree to some extent, we're going to have a lot of problems here, I think. So.
David?
No, I think I've said enough tonight, haven't I? I back on what you said. Yeah, that is the most important conversation you need to have. You can't roll boat in two different directions. And until you are, in your service levels, what that actually means, and you develop an appetite for funding those service levels, you're going to go around in circles. Right? It is the most important conversation. So really echoing what I've said.
Just one last chance for members if you have any other questions while we're still in the open forum. No, Jenkins?
Just very briefly, just to reiterate what you said, and this is a democracy, and we have got 9 elected members and myself. We may not always agree on things, but I think it's really important, once we've had the robust debate and that we have voted, that we are on board and go with that. There are things as Mayor that I may not agree with, that the elected body vote for, and I make sure that I support the elected body. I think all of the councillors have that responsibility as well when we make decisions, because otherwise what ends up happening is that the community gets confused, it doesn't know what's going on, and people trust the council less. Whereas the council are all members who have the community at the forefront of their mind. They're all different individuals, they all focus on different things. We have some very robust discussions, and at the end of the day we make decisions and we set the strategic plan for administration to follow. We take the advice, perhaps not as much as we should be, from the Audit and Risk Committee, but we need to all be on board once we've made a decision.
Councillor Schiller?
Does the Audit and Risk Committee have a role to play in our scheduling of our budget sessions, and when, without having been here for 2 years, I've seen two different years where we've done things slightly differently each time, but whether there's a role for the way the schedule of our budget deliberations with the council and the audit committee, they have a place to make some alterations with that?
So, Councillor Schiller, the council sets the time frame or the work program for the preparation of your annual business plan and budget, and within that are checks of when we report back to the Audit and Risk Committee to give council advice. In terms of, I think your special council meeting you've referred to, happy to take on board those comments. I mean, we've had, I think there was about 5 workshops and 2 presentations of information to the Audit and Risk Committee. But bringing the Audit and Risk Committee on board earlier and participating in that, happy to take that on board, but it's really the Chamber that sets that time frame. We're bound by certain requirements of when we have to actually, how long we consult for within the community, and also when we need to have our annual business plan adopted by within the legislation. But the Chamber can be the the decision maker as to how that's structured, and we can look at that further for the 25-26 financial year.
South Coast Television, your community, your voice.